53 hours into the sequel of The Division, I have completed its lengthy campaign, traversed the beautiful world it has to offer me, and reached every endgame activity available at launch. There is no question in my mind that is the most expansive and excellently crafted looter-shooter experience since maybe the Borderlands series. There are so many fun and interesting things to do, and unlike the first game, you can now hunt after secret items, bosses, and missions. These make the game feel so much more dynamic and add to the realism of its world. My name is Adore, and it is with joy in my heart that I bring you my review of The Division 2. Story. 7 months since the outbreak, DC is now a fallen mess of blown-out buildings, chaotic streets with vines and trash strewn everywhere, and absolute anarchy among its citizens. Many of them have become disillusioned with the state of the nation and have found solidarity and community within dangerous gangs and taken up arms against any peacekeepers who stand in their way of looting and living life the way that they see fit. As you venture all the way from the Lincoln Memorial to Capitol Hill, you will see the devastating effects such choices have wrought upon the city. You will interrupt indiscriminate executions of citizens caught by various factions. I like to think many of these people who turn to this life are in fact bringing an end to those they once called family, friends, and co-workers. It is you who will have to create the deeper story that exists in this dynamic world, as the one place that Division 2 looks like a fallen city is in its story and narrative arcs. I admit to skipping cutscenes that seem pulled straight from apocalyptic B-movies right down to bad acting and terrible voice acting. There isn't a lot to love about how The Division 2 handles its story, but narrative woven throughout all of its main and side missions is absolutely welcome. Just don't expect anything all that novel here. This is your basic military shooter, with all the trappings and tropes that entails. The Division 2 claims it's apolitical fiction. It has a story to tell and a position to take, but in no way does it ever delve deeper than the base foundation holding it all together. It's far easier to just accept that the green poison spread through currency has caused them to meet their demise, rather than blame any political system or positions. Art is meant to evoke argument and unity alike, and the Second Division offers us neither. Presentation and graphics. Nothing could be further than the truth, though, when we look at the graphical fidelity and design of the world that Ubisoft has brought so much life to. Visually, The Division 2 is the technical marvel and art piece that you'd expect to be commissioned to adorn the walls of the Sistine Chapel. The developers at Ubisoft have truly channeled their inner Michelangelo in crafting such a wonderful game engine as Snowdrop. And game after game, it continues to awe and impress me. The brilliance of God rays fill your vision as the sun shines through varied vegetation and ruined structures of our once great capital. Overgrown vines constrict and choke highways and residential areas. You'll walk through deep water and lakes while admiring the realism they convey as they reflect objects and shadows dance across their surfaces. A very powerful ambient occlusion system works in conjunction with parallax mapping to incredible effect, giving everything a real sense of depth and dimension. Despite looking worlds better in the full release than the first game, The Division 2 actually tends to run significantly better on my modest 1060 graphics card and powerful i9-9900K processor. With a few tweaks to ultra quality settings, I am able to bench a 79 FPS average and have full 60 FPS performance when turning on both VSync and the built-in frame limiter. I imagine, even on weaker systems, with a few sacrifices, anyone should be able to ensure themselves a smooth experience. My rig cannot run 1440p, unfortunately, with my preset, except at a meager 40 frames per second average, so I've stuck to 1080p here, but your results will definitely vary. Regardless of what PC you're playing on though, the game scales very well. On consoles, it certainly maintains its high production values, especially due to its more varied landscape, which really goes a long way to setting it apart from the often samey locations of Manhattan. Sound and music. Weapons are the stars in The Division 2, much like in the previous iteration of this IP. They all sound different and sufficiently punchy. I know absolutely nothing about guns, but I imagine firing one would not be too different from what is experienced here, at least from a sound perspective. This was something that impressed me about the first Division, how grounded its weapons and abilities felt. I don't think there's much to talk about regarding the music in this game, as it really is what you'd expect from a military shooter created in 2019. There are a few good songs, but nothing to praise, and nothing really to scorn either. Voice acting ranges from passable to abysmal, with a few obvious standouts, but I don't think anyone came into this game expecting much in this department.
This is our last radio contact with Espinosa.
There's hyenas all over the complex.
Any idea what they're doing there?
Not a clue.
World. I have so far only spoken about one activity that a player can take part in while navigating DC's web of concrete jungle and natural environments. That was being able to come across and stop executions of citizens and peacekeepers. The Division, though, has such a large swath of fun things to do, it'll make your head spin. Another Ubisoft map full of colored icons like recent Assassin's Creed games here. You'll find everything though is worthwhile and rewarding this time, ensuring that no matter what you choose to do, you're always going to feel a real sense of progression and character growth. Stop convoys of varying enemy types and factions. Help allies take over control points around the city by sending up a flare and attacking till they arrive to assist, many times when you're on your last legs. These are really involved as you retake locations that have been overrun by enemies and then defend against elite enemy forces sent your way to stop you. If you manage to succeed, you can open one of the large supply rooms and net yourself really powerful gear and weapons. More in a few minutes on how the Division 2's improved difficulty and enemy tactics contribute to its excellent combat system. Lesser territory control missions task you with taking out defensive fortifications as enemy factions work towards building an army to send against larger scale control points. You feel far less alone in the Division 2, as even the aforementioned executions lead to allies fighting with you, assuming you've saved their lives. When you aren't tackling these more involved encounters, you can seek out any of the 52 unique world bosses, or engage elite enemies for keys to gear caches with powerful rewards. One new event involves seeking out 12 hunter enemies that act a lot like human players. These are like the NPC encounters from Dark Souls, and they were in the first Division. However, here, you must do certain actions like shoot out a light illuminating a memorial and then salute it, for them to spawn in a poof of smoke. Each of them wears a mask that you can loot upon killing them, and these are very unique items you will not get anywhere else in the game. So they're very sought after right now. Some more memorable world events involve unlocking and then upgrading the many settlements. At the theater settlement, I completed a project that gave the kids a new game room, and at the campus, I helped build an elementary school. These are really great rewards and made me feel like I was really contributing to the well-being of DC's citizens, especially the children, and I love kids. At every settlement, you can take on various projects like these, and they really change how these locations look and who you can interact with. They also allow you to access various vendors with rotating stock, in case one of your items is low gear and RNGesus hates you. Missions and side quests. Gone are the boring fetch quests from the first game, replaced with rational excursions through broken buildings, saving brothers and sisters who've been kidnapped, or taking out certain bosses that have created thrones for themselves in underground subways and blown out malls. Every side quest has meaning and was incredibly enjoyable to me. Main missions are masterly crafted, with far more interesting set pieces. A working planetarium, a museum full of historical dioramas including a Vietnam-themed room with helicopters and soldiers everywhere. There are so many great places to fight in that playing through these missions over and over never really gets old. A few side missions can only be obtained by finding secret quest givers, and these are really fun to hunt down. One of them is hiding in a sewer area, which DC is actually full of. Entrances to the underground are all over the place, and down below the city in these areas you can find various hidden items. Although I haven't found hunters roaming them or anything like that yet. Something else brings much needed variety to Division 2, and this leads us right into Endgame. After you have completed the final mission, and the 3 dungeons that are currently available, everything changes, and I do mean everything. A new faction known as the Black Tusk makes their debut in epic fashion, taking over entire areas of the map, rendering much of your work useless, and tasking you with fighting back against them with everything you've got. You'll need it too, as these new enemies are not to be trifled with. They are hardened soldiers, and they bring new meaning to the phrase challenging. Utilizing advanced combat tactics and enemy formations, the Black Tusk faction is sure to always keep you on your toes. They have special abilities of their own and will absolutely bombard you with robot dogs and drone attacks. Once you reach Endgame, invaded missions come into play, because it isn't just world events that have been altered by the arrival of the Black Tusk faction. A cutscene plays right after completing the final stronghold, and it shows Black Tusk operatives mounting various night assaults on locations like the US Capitol you just cleared out. In invaded missions, the entire narrative and objectives change, and give way to new experiences tailored to this new enemy faction. This is such a wonderful addition, and it breathes new life into every one of the expertly designed story missions. The Stronghold missions are altered as well, although I personally found at times Black Tusk invaded encounters were a lot easier, despite the Special Forces tactics. The main change in Endgame is that now everything in the world map is playing out dynamically, with control points constantly being contested, and you're now tasked with taking them back at a regular clip. Otherwise, you're going to lose access to the fast travel points that you fought so hard to obtain. It's a real tug of war, but oh so enjoyable. Tier 4 is the highest rank that you can reach at launch, and I experienced a weird bug where after I reached it, playing a challenging mission had me overleveled, but then locked behind that same stronghold I just completed to get to Tier 4 due to now being Tier 3 again. Not a major issue, but it is worth noting. A harder Tier 5 is supposed to drop in an update very soon. bringing with it major changes like a level cap increase, new stronghold dungeon called Titan Basin, a higher heroic difficulty setting, and new gear sets with powerful set bonuses. Soon after, we're going to see a 8-player raid, a first for the Division franchise. I can't wait to play it, as well as the new tier, and I'll let you know all of my thoughts when I finally get my hands on it. Dark Zones. Let me take a few minutes to discuss both the bugs surrounding the Dark Zones, as well as my thoughts on the changes moving from one large location like Manhattan to the 3 smaller locations that we find in the Division 2. A lot of my feelings have not changed since the beta, and so if you watch that, you're probably aware that I see some major problems here. For those who haven't seen my beta impressions, here's a link for you to check out. Real quick though, I still feel that this iteration is a step backwards. The Dark Zones feel empty and lifeless when compared to the dynamic world in the LZ, or even how they function in the first game. Landmarks are fun to explore and clear out, but their novelty wore out really fast in my opinion. Having only actually just unlocked the Dark Zones due to a game-breaking bug, I might just need more time in them to really start to appreciate what's here. There is always one Dark Zone that's occupied, and this means that stats are not normalized there. If you enter with low gear, expect to get annihilated by higher gear enemies and players. Dark Zone East is the first of the 3, and it is where the bug I mentioned took place. For some reason, waypoints had never triggered for the recon mission required to unlock it, and so I actually ended up in endgame before finally realizing that entering the southernmost checkpoint and exiting it had fixed this. Sadly, I had bugs and glitches occur while trying to unlock all 3 of the Dark Zone areas. The second one, DZ South, had me stuck and forced to kill myself just to open the door into the zone. And the last one, DZ West, required a death and replay of the first part of the mission before it finally showed me additional steps to complete it. These bugs drag down an otherwise incredibly polished game. I made a video showing all my solutions to these bugs that you can check out with the link right here, if you're still struggling. The Dark Zones are varied at least, so they don't feel the same, but they still feel like a missed opportunity, and at this time I don't expect to sink too much time into them. Maybe you feel differently though, if you've been playing them since launch. Please let me know, as I'd love to be wrong about this. There's something else that makes great changes to how you approach combat, and a new leveling system that is unlocked once you reach endgame. But let me talk about enemy factions for just a few minutes first. Black Tusk is one of 4 factions in the game, but you only ever meet them in endgame, making their original introduction really memorable. The other factions you encounter while completing objectives and taking out bosses are the Hyenas, Outcasts, and True Sons. Each faction feels unique and has purpose behind why they've brought so much pain and destruction to the nation that they once held dear. Outcasts were quarantined against their will, and they believe that the best revenge is a dish served with toxins. Hyenas are functionally scavengers who kill and loot indiscriminately. Finally, the True Sons are led by former JTF, and they utilize advanced weaponry. They are bent on spreading their territorial rule at all costs. Each faction has special units, and these vary from flamethrower wielders to masters of explosive archery weapons. No matter what faction you're fighting against though, they don't feel the same as the others, and to their credit, Ubisoft has made believable distinctions in both appearance and tactics when crafting interesting enemies to fight. Skills and abilities. The Division 2 expands almost everything, and this is noticed nowhere more than with regard to skills and the new specializations that Endgame introduces. Whether you want to run around with drones healing you constantly, or rain down explosive hell upon your enemies with a mortar launcher, you can do it in the Division 2. I chose a incinerator turret and mini drones that attack enemies like bees when their hive is disturbed. but I changed this up a bit due to my flamethrower turret not always engaging enemies. It seems there's a bug because if I placed it without enemies currently nearby, it would simply never engage them. I also experienced the skill bug, which appears to be patched now, wherein skills were actually deploying but shutting off immediately, with a reduced cooldown of 15 seconds. While there might be merit for something like this as an option for short burst damage, it wasn't intended. This skill setup felt very good to me, but unlike the first division, I think there's much more room here for experimentation regarding valid team compositions. No skill felt particularly weak except for maybe the Bombardier drone, and I already hated that from the open beta. It really hasn't changed much. I have yet to try out the various mobile shield varieties, one of which reflects bullets, and sounds really awesome. But that's because, apart from one of the variations of the mobile shield, I'd actually be limited to a sidearm when using them. And that isn't exactly my playstyle. But it might totally be yours, and that's what's so great about Massive's new changes to perks and skills. There were objectively better skills and perks in the first game, and running a build without them many times got me yelled at. I was shamed for playing the game the way I wanted. Thankfully, while some skills are still likely weak, it seems like the balance here has been drastically improved. Each skill has about 3 to 4 different variations. Seeker mines that roll around on the ground can seek out targets and become an airburst attack, or they can split into multiple mini mines and take out multiple enemies. The turret has a sniper variation that allows you to pump insane damage into any single target. On top of these, mods can actually be equipped to any item, including skills, and these can increase damage range or even lower skill cooldowns. Perks are now universal, with everyone having the same setup, but things like increased damage while running have now been relegated to weapon talents and armor set bonuses. The only gripe I have with skills and abilities in this iteration of the Division is that, much like what I mentioned in my beta impressions of the game, cooldowns are ridiculously long, feeling more like ultimate abilities, and making the focus on weapons as the primary damage dealers. I think they should be lowered ever so slightly for a bit more balanced gameplay experience. However, it's possible, without any exotics in my possession at this point, that those and Tier 5 armor set bonuses will make up the difference with cooldown reduction talents. Ultimate abilities have been completely removed from Division 2, as 3 awesome specialization classes are unlocked once you reach endgame. These function entirely different than ultimates and have special ammunition just like any other gun. Whether enemies drop ammo required to use them is RNG based, but an entirely new leveling system exists for making these special weapons more powerful and increasing the chances of ammo dropping for them. None of the talents you can activate through purchasing them with specialization points are really a trade-off, as your points are earned individually with each of the different weapons, and once you unlock all of them, you're not going to have to decide which ones you like. You'll be able to keep your 20% burn resist and 5% sidearm damage that you desire. While unlocking these, you will have to make choices, but you can respec at any point at no cost to yourself, so far as I can tell. I chose Demolitionist and have almost completed its tree at this point. The main trade-off is that all of these talents are deactivated if you switch specialization. But that's okay, because each specialization offers unique and powerful talents and perks, and they really switch up the way that combat feels. The other 2 available specializations are Survivalist and Sharpshooter. These offer you a crossbow that shoots explosives and a 50 cal sniper rifle respectively. Each of these classes also offer a unique sidearm weapon and grenade, as well as a cosmetic appearance that you can equip at any time so long as you have that specialization activated. I, however, did not see a way to upgrade the sidearm, and so I wonder how I would ever bring them up to my current 447 gear score. I really love the specialization classes, as unlike the first division's ultimate skills, they function with ammo and RNG. Meaning that in one mission, I might not use them at all, and in another, I might be utilizing the grenade launcher in every encounter. More specializations have been promised for the future and are sure to expand our arsenal. But I already adore what is on offer. Weapons and armor. In The Division 2, you will find all assortment of weapons, ranging from pump-action shotguns to submachine guns to devastating sniper rifles, and all manner of sidearms. These feel far more exotic than normal weapons normally feel in really any game. While the theme doesn't allow for rocket launchers, sci-fi weapons, or anything particularly interesting, the weapons talents more than make up for this. There are so many useful talents, and it seems like they can drop on just about any weapon. One, called Recharged, makes it so that any skill used while at full armor has 25% increased duration, charges, and ammo. While holstered, another weapon might cause nearby enemies to have a status effect like shock applied to them, and this could occur every minute, just because of that weapon talent. A talent called Cannon even upgrades your grenade range by 10%. All of these can work in tandem with each other for devastating combinations, and they're governed by new mod slots on items that allow you to increase armor, health, or battery attributes. Having too little armor might disable a talent, but it might enable another. This is a very similar system to the last game. What is different, however, is a streamlined weapon mod system. It appears that weapon attachments are now static, and I haven't really seen them differing from an RNG system. Rather, a particular red dot sight will function the same on any weapon. This is honestly probably a positive, as keeping track of these and which were applied to which weapons was a real headache. It also helps balance the builds, as now if you've done an activity that gets you an ACOG scope, yours is going to function the same as everybody else's. At first, I didn't like this, but in the dozens of hours I've put into the game, the system has really grown on me, and I understand why it's been overhauled. Difficulty. The game is a real challenge, and this can become especially annoying once you reach endgame and just want to explore the world, only to be blocked by powerful enemies every which way you turn. One thing I hate but recognize should probably function the way it does is that dying in any event that isn't a mission or stronghold leads to having to respawn at a distant safe house or a currently held control point. Sometimes though, such safe havens are really far away from where I died, and running back to my body having to contend with newly formed battalions on the streets surrounding it can feel like a real chore. Every enemy in The Division 2 has been tuned with smarter AI and better tactics, and while this makes for a more challenging experience, it also makes combat feel much more lifelike and dynamic. I really can't see myself ever going back to the first game, because the improvements here are just staggering. Still, sometimes enemies act brain dead, but honestly so do people. In conclusion, this is the total package, and best looter shooter I've personally played, as I said before, since Borderlands. This brings me to my rating and my new rating system, which will have me rating games on whether I adored them, whether they were kind of meh, or whether I feel like you should avoid them completely. It should be noted that if a game is just meh, it may be worth waiting for a discount or renting it instead. That is not the case with Ubisoft's newest game. I absolutely adored The Division 2. It is full of life, character, and incredible art design. It avoids all the pitfalls of games that launch with little to no endgame, bringing actually the greatest offering of endgame activities at launch, probably in the history of video games. It is beautiful in sense of scope and its themed setting. Washington, D.C. is such an interesting location with varied environments and built with one-to-one scale in mind. It's teeming with wildlife and interesting monuments to marvel at. This is the most authentic representation of the city probably possible, and everyone involved in its creation should be commended for their perfect attention to detail. Unlike the elusive exotic weapons and items that I'm still hunting in this game, you don't have to wait for RNG to drop a better game in this genre. Ubisoft and Massive have truly crafted an exotic looter shooter experience. It is an absolute masterpiece, and 2019 already feels a bit brighter because of it. Well, that's my review, and I hope you really liked it. If you did, you can click the like button right there. It means so very much to me. If you didn't though, there's a less happy button that you can click, but you wouldn't want to click that and do bad things to me now, would you? Share this video everywhere and comment your thoughts below, whether they be about the review, The Division 2, or just how I'm doing. Please though, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new and ring the bell, cause if you don't ring the bell, then you won't hear from me very often. Sad face. As always though, no matter what you choose to do, please have a wonderful rest of your day. Okay, bye-bye.